Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Suakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. To the Blessed One, the Lord, who fully attained perfect enlightenment, to the teaching which he expounded so well, and to the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, to these the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, we render with offerings our rightful homage. It is well for us that the Blessed One, having attained liberation, still had compassion for later generations. May these simple offerings be accepted for our long-lasting benefit and for the happiness it gives us. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and Blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teaching so completely explained by him, I vow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I vow to the Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened One. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened One. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened One. Tam ko panna bhagavantang evam kalyano kitisaro abhugato iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vinja charana sampanno sugatolo kavidu annutaro purisa dhamma sarati sata deva manusanam bullo bhagava tisuakato bhagavata dhammo sanditiko akaliko ehipasiko opanaiko pachatam veditabo vinyu iti supatipanno bhagavato savaka sango ujupatipanno bhagavato savaka sango nyayapatipanno bhagavato savaka sango sammichipatipanno bhagavato savaka sango yadidam chatari purisa yugani ata purisa pugala esa bhagavato savaka sango ahuneyo pauneyo dakineyo anjali karaniyo anutaram punyaketang lokasati. A good word of the Blessed One's reputation has spread as follows. He, the Blessed One, is indeed the Pure One, the perfectly enlightened One. He is impeccable in conduct and understanding, the accomplished One, the knower of the worlds. He trains perfectly those who wish to be trained. He is teacher of gods and humans. He is awake and holy. The Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One, apparent here and now, timeless, encouraging investigation, leading inwards, to be experienced individually by the wise. They are the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, who have practiced directly, who have practiced insightfully, those who practice with integrity. That is the 4 pairs, the 8 kinds of noble beings. These are the Blessed One's disciples. Such ones are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respect. They give occasion for incomparable goodness to arise in the world. The Metta Sutta, the Buddha's words on loving kindness, on page 6. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Letting the tone of the chant and the sutta ring in the heart. And let the words wash through and settle again into the stillness of meditation. And we'll touch into the heart practices once more. Just as the body settles into its shape, and the mind comes into presence in the here and now. Connect with the heart. Whatever feeling is moving through, suffuse that feeling with the intention for kindness. And invite the warm heart of metta, friendliness, to shine through the whole body, mixing the warmth of kindness, the rising and falling breath. So that the breathing itself is a reminder that you are loved, and that you offer love. And that if we allow ourselves to know it, we can know the whole universe is suffused with love. Beginning with this body, exactly as it is. And then, like the body is a kind of lighthouse in the dark night of the world, open to the front, to the whole quarter of the circle of the directions that's in front of you, and shine the light, the warmth of loving kindness, feeling the breath through the front of the body. Shine the light of loving kindness out to touch all beings in the direction in front of you. And beings that are close by and further away, large and small, seen and unseen, as the sutta says, known and unknown. Wrapping around the planet and out into the infinite reaches of the universe. Suffusing the direction with kindness. And then turning to the right side of the body. Just turning your attention to feel the right arm and leg and the side of the torso. Feel the breath there. Suffuse the breath into the right side of the body. And then let the warmth of kindness blossom through the right side with the breath. And then opening the light, the lighthouse of the heart, swings around to the quarter to the right. All beings to the right of me, near and far, large and small, seen and unseen, human, animal, spirit. Suffusing the universe in this direction with kindness. And without losing touch of the front and the right side, still feeling the breath and the field of kindness. Swinging attention to the back of the body, the back of the head and the neck and the shoulders, the whole back line. Feel the breath there, the breath suffused with loving kindness. Kindness toward all the sensations of the back, all the stories, all of myself. And turning the light to illuminate the infinite universe in the quarter behind the body with kindness. All beings behind me, from where I sit now, known and unknown, seen and unseen. And then turning attention to the left side in the same way. First awakening sensation with breath. And then bringing the heart quality. And then shining the light out. All beings to my left. Stitching together the full circle, all four cardinal directions around the body. So we're a light shining out in all these directions. Let's include the below, shining out through the base of the body, down through the earth, all of the creatures in the earth, and out the other side, and out into the infinite universe. Feel the breath in the base of the central column and through the legs. And the breath suffused with kindness. And then lastly above, the same. Feel the breath through the crown of the head, the warmth of friendliness shining upward. All beings above this body. As far out as my imagination can hold. And now stitch together the sphere of energy and loving kindness around you. If there's any gaps or missed places, any parts of the body or the heart that can be stitched into this field that now touches everything that exists if we let it go out far enough. To continue with this as a meditation, you can use the feeling itself or the sense of infinite spaciousness as the meditative object. You might support that by thinking the word metta with the breath, inhaling met, exhaling ta, as a way to stay close to the feeling. If it begins to become too diffuse, just come back to the body, the full body breathing. Remember your own goodness, the goodness of your Dharma friends, of those you love. The goodness of beings everywhere. And start again at the center. Just begin to shine the feeling out in all directions. We'll take about 10 before the talk. So maybe let's have a bell in about 5 to the bell ringer. We'll come back at 1:45. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So there was a request from one of your fearless camp leaders, who is not with us at this moment, that I might talk about the deathless.
That what?
About the deathless. Yeah, I'll speak up. There was a request from your fearless camp leader that I talk tonight a bit about the deathless. So that's an ambitious request. I'll see what I can do. That might be helpful. We've touched into some of the both mechanisms of practice, the guidelines for steadying the attention, opening the heart, and turning the opened heart and steadied attention toward understanding this life, toward understanding suffering and difficulty, toward understanding pleasure, how pleasure is healthy, how pleasure can be the source of grasping, how that grasping can be painful. All of these kinds of practices and investigations or inquiries have as their goal well-being, and ease, and peace of heart and mind. And the Buddha describes this well-being and peace of heart and mind not just as a distant fruit of practice that might come someday, some lifetime, if you're lucky and tremendously disciplined, but as a gradually ripening fruit that's available from the very beginning of practice. My grandfather teacher, Ajahn Chah, my teacher Jack's teacher, famously said it this way: if you let go a little, you'll have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you'll have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you'll have complete peace. In the discourses, there's this wonderful line that says that the Dhamma is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, and beautiful at the end. The fruit of practice that the Buddha sought was something that he called the deathless. When he would tell his life story, he would say, when I was still young, with black hair and beard, despite my parents' tearful faces, I reflected to myself, why do I seek among that which is subject to old age, sickness, and death, the end of old age, sickness, and death? Why am I trying to find the thing I want to find in a place where it can't be found? So, at the very beginning of his search, he recognized that he was looking for something that couldn't be attained in the world of possessions and relationships. Right? In the world of being related to things that were, like himself, subject to aging, sickness, and death, loss. So this was his initial reflection. This eventually gets dramatized in the story of the heavenly messengers, which isn't in the Pali Canon, the earliest layer that we have of the Buddha's teachings, but it appears slightly later in the mythologies, the hagiography that grew up around him. It shows up in the story of the Buddha's life, the Buddha Charita, and the Lalita Vistara, two of the early kind of mythical biographies. But in this story, the Buddha to be, young Gautama, after being sheltered for his whole childhood by his father, sheltered in profound wealth, he says, I lived in luxury, utmost luxury. I had a palace for the hot season, a palace for the dry season, and a palace for the wet season. And he had musicians. The text is clear to tell us that all the musicians were female. I guess that was good, for the time. I don't know. So he had a girl band to play music for him, and lived a life of utmost refinement. So he had sensual pleasures. He was married. He was set up into an arranged marriage when he was a teenager, had a child, and he had these palaces that seemed to have been built for climate control. Like, he was comfortable a lot. It's raining, you go to the rainy palace, and I guess it's good for when it's raining. And then the story tells us that he had all of this enclosed within a high wall. Because when he was born, sages visited his family and looked at the child, did the astrology, and said to his parents that this child will either be a great king, an emperor. They liked this idea very much. Or a great renunciate, a spiritual seeker, who leaves the world of family and comforts to teach and live in the wilderness. They did not like this idea very much. Parents, what are you going to do? And so his father, whose name was Suddhodana, had quite a bit of wisdom to him, and he awakened eventually in this lifetime. The Buddha came back and taught his family, and a lot of folks in his family awoke fully, including his child and his wife and his parents. His father, his mother died 7 days after he was born. And so decades later, when he was enlightened and had the power of visiting the heaven realms, for one entire rains retreat every night, he would, through the power of his concentration, transport himself to the heaven realm where his mother was residing as a heavenly being, having given birth to the Bodhisattva. And he would teach her the Dhamma all night. And then in the morning when he came down, he would give the Cliff Notes summary to Sariputta, his student. who then assembled that summary into the Abhidhamma, the summary of the teachings. So it is said. So Suddhodana, his father, had some wisdom to him, and he thought, people leave home to seek the deathless, to seek spirit, because they encounter suffering. It's pain that leads one to become discontent with wealth and sensual pleasures. So he thought, in sort of perfect fairy tale logic, if I protect my son from every form of pain and discomfort or exposure to loss, he won't leave. And that in itself is a poignant lesson in parenting. The failures of parenting, and the grief of pain. You give birth to someone and you want them to be happy, and you like the idea of them becoming rich and powerful. But Suddhodana is actually quite wise. He understands that that's in fact exactly how it works. What he doesn't get, of course, because it's a fairy tale of sorts, is that you can't protect someone from pain. So in the story, the Buddha, jumps the wall with his friend Channa, the charioteer, his driver. He gets an Uber out of the country club and he goes into the barrio to actually see the people that live next door. And so he goes 4 times. The first time he sees an old person, and the text spares no detail. It says, bent over like a crooked roof beam, teeth falling out, head drooped over, tottering on a cane, the teeth have fallen out, like, really, an old person of that time. And the Buddha says, what is this? It's an old person. The driver is working class. The driver's seen all of this already. It's an old person. Is it possible that, Channa, that I could become like this, that you could? My Lord, it's inevitable. All bodies grow old. Next night they go out again. They see a sick person, lying at the edge of the street on a little stretcher. Maybe they've soiled themselves, they've vomited, the stench is terrible, there's infection, they're dying. Channa, what is this? Oh, my Lord, it's a sick person. Could this happen to me? Yes. This happens. Now the Gautama is really stricken with fear. Night 3 they go out and of course they see a funeral procession. Folks carrying a body through the streets as they still do, in Benares, down to the burning guts to be cremated. What is this? Corpse. This is a corpse, my Lord. This will happen to all of us. This is the inevitable, Now Gautama really is afraid. And he begins to lose his joy in all of the pleasures of his life, because he can see that the marvelous musicians are going to sicken and grow old and die. And his father has in the myth arranged so that any servant or companion of the Buddha's, like he had friends that would hang around, but anytime they would get a little old or get pregnant or get sick or anything dramatic, they would get, just like quietly replaced in the night with another young pretty person. And the stories really play this up. They're like the minute a flower started to wilt, it would be quietly replaced by a new fresh one. And so, it's
the story makes it, heightens it, so you get the point. But can you remember, moments maybe in your own youth when you couldn't really look toward all the things that were, old, sick, dying? At some point you were forced to, inevitably. But there's moments when, you could just go party with other people who were, hot and young and beautiful, and somehow not yet touched by the reality that's true for all bodies. And so the Buddha becomes anxious, really, about death and loss. And so it's really this fear that drives him to take up the ascetic life. He can't enjoy his family anymore because all he can see is their death and the loss of them. And so he leaves his whole extended family, caring for each other. He goes out. Channa drives him to the edge of the town, and he dramatically cuts off his long hair and gives his wealthy clothes to his driver. He heads out, and he says, I gave up seeking the deathless among that which will die. I went into the wilderness to seek that which is beyond birth and death. And so he does his practice. I described a little bit of this the first day. He practices formless concentrations. He practices bodily mortification. And maybe if we stitch those two stories together, you get more of a sense of why he did those things. He's looking for that which will not die, that which is beyond the threat of death. And so he tries to see what it's like if you torment the body to the point of, getting very close to death. Or can you get over pain? Can you be done with fear by encountering that which hurts? I also think in a way he's kind of recovering from the life of that kind of wealth. He was soft in a certain way. And he had to figure out, how do you really live in contact with the elements? He goes out to live in the wilderness. No more climate-controlled palaces. No more, dancing girls and flawless flowers. So he does all this practice, and then as we looked at, what he comes upon is this meditation that is relaxed and pleasurable and not sensual. And by not sensual, I don't mean not involved with bodily energies. I mean not engaged with contact with something external in the senses, right? Because that was his initial intuition, was don't seek the deathless among that which is conditioned to die. And so if you look outward with your senses, everything you see, he got this intuitively right away, is impermanent, is marked by loss, right? You can't rely on a single friendship or relationship or family member, This is the guy who lost his mother at 1 week old. He was raised by his stepmother, his mother's sister, so his father's second wife, Mahapajapati. She becomes the first nun and the eldest of the enlightened women. That's a different story for later. But here's someone who, he's undergone some attachment rupture. He's come to not feel like he belongs in his family system. He doesn't believe in what the family believes in anymore. And then he remembers this way of being that is easeful and peaceful. And he follows that through to nourishing the body with Sujata's gift of the milk rice, and then settling into meditation and bringing his mind through the layers of meditative absorption called the 4 jhana. And then having completely cleared out his emotional and mental field through that practice, really brought the energies to balance. The power that awoke in him through doing that was the power of clairvoyance. It was the power of clear seeing. It's partly why this tradition is called vipassana. This is the, don't tell anyone I'm saying this. This is a developing clairvoyance practice in a kind of very classical way. The Buddha says, when he tells it, he says, I brought the mind to clarity through absorption, through jhana. And then what I did was, once the mind was purified, clarified, malleable, workable, I directed it to the memory of past lives. That's the thing he does to become awakened. And so, leaving aside wrestling with should we believe in past lives or not, set that aside for the moment. For tonight, let's just call that doubt. We don't know. But taking the text at its word, this is what he says he does. And there's something in here that I think is that we can touch in our own practice, even if we don't have that kind of power of vision to see our past lives. He says, I directed my mind to the vision of my past lives, and I saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 100, 1,000, 100,000 past lives, cosmic eons expanding and contracting. So he doesn't just remember a few lives. He remembers the entire universe expanding and contracting around him. And so, part of what is so interesting about this for me is that he develops this profound clarity of mind, and then what he does is he remembers. He doesn't ask what is real or what is true. He doesn't go existential directly. He says, let me think backwards into what has happened before. So just feel for a moment the connection between that as his action and the thing that he's seeking, the deathless. Right? He's seeking an answer to why we must grow old and sicken and die. And so he thinks backward. Some scholars think and propose that the idea of rebirth or reincarnation was present in the culture around the Buddha. And so he's thinking back into something he already takes as fact. That is not universally agreed upon. There are some scholars now looking at the texts and the contemporary evidence that actually think that the idea of recurring rebirths may have been a fringe theory, or even that it was relatively new in the Buddha's time. Many of his contemporary teachers, there are 6 that get commonly mentioned in the discourses, not all of them believe in rebirth at all. One of them is a strict materialist that believes there's only matter and nothing else, and when you die, nothing happens. And when you slice a sword through a body, all that happens is atoms are separated by space and nothing is lost and no one dies, like a strict materialist. So that's a nihilistic position. Another believed, another variation of other variations of that, none of which included rebirth. And all the way back in the early Vedas, the texts of South Asia, now India, that preceded the Buddha, in the Rig Veda there's no rebirth. People who die go to the land of the ancestors, or the land of the fathers, the realm of the fathers. And in a certain way, a more kind of indigenous relationship to the dead as ancestors, but not this cyclic rebirth. So it's not clear, actually, if the Buddha was already saying, like, oh yeah, I know I had rebirths, therefore I'm going to investigate them. Or if actually he did what seems like a stranger and maybe braver gesture, which is he just remembered the past. He brought his attention back. And it's a meditative exercise. It's a beautiful exercise to try to do this yourself. Get as quiet as you can in meditation. And at some point, trace your life backwards. And you probably do it through like jumping to snapshots. I remember something about how last year was, and something about how the year before that was. And you might encounter big blank spots where you're sort of like, yeah, there was the whole early 40s. I don't know. I remember something that happened when I was 39, And you keep jumping back. And for many of us, there's big gaps. And there's particularly a big gap called early childhood amnesia that goes until you're about 3 to 4 and some years old, where most of us don't have a lot of memory in those early times. You can touch into it sometimes. One of the teachers in our lineage, Dipa Ma, was said to have had profound concentration and very deep supernormal powers. Like when she came for her meditation interview, they would station a student outside her room, her little cabin, and a student outside the door of the teacher's cabin, and make sure neither of the doors opened, and she would just disappear from her cabin, appear in the teacher's cabin, do her interview, and then disappear and reappear in her cabin. Her teacher, Munindraji, said that he wanted her to study the supernormal powers because almost nobody can do them anymore. And he himself couldn't do them, but he knew how to teach her. And he wanted her to learn them so that she could be evidence to the world that these were real and not just mythic. So she learned them. Later in her life, one of the Westerners in this tradition was interviewing her and said, so you learned to do these things? She said, oh yes. And he said, can you do them now? And she said, oh no, I haven't practiced in a long time. And he said, well, if you wanted to do them again, how long would you have to practice to kind of warm up? And she said, oh, I'd have to practice for a while, at least 2 or 3 days. So she at one point said that she had the intuition that she had been present in the time of the Buddha and had heard him speak, and so she remembered it. And someone asked her, how did you do that? How do you go back like that? And she said, mind moment by mind moment. So try this out. Remember what you felt when I said that sentence half a minute ago. Like how it felt to hear the Dipa Ma story. And then remember how it felt to hear the story of the Buddha's climate-controlled palaces. Remember that moment. Remember sitting down in your chair, arriving for the talk. Can you do it? Remember what that felt like. How did your body move sitting down? What was your mind doing? What were you thinking about? So mindfulness is the same word as memory in Pali. So the Buddha and Dipa Ma used powerful mindfulness to remember backwards. And so he says, he remembered all these past lives. And that what he remembered was where he was born, what his social role was, so what his caste was, what he ate. I don't know why that's in there, but he remembers what he commonly ate, how he died, and where he was reborn. Having seen this, he does a different exercise next. In his second exercise, having seen his past lives, he then turns his gaze outward. He turns the power of his clairvoyance outward, and he looks at other people. And he says, okay, how is it that people die in one place and get reborn in another place? What's that about? How does that happen? And notice, he doesn't say, why does that happen? Or like, what is it that gets... People always ask, like, if there's no self, what gets reborn? We can answer that question sort of maybe at some point. But he doesn't go there at all. It's not about what is the entity that gets reborn. He really says... how or why does it happen in the way that it does? Like, why is it such that a person, goes from a lifetime as a muskrat to a lifetime as a potter, to a lifetime as a celestial being, to a lifetime as a tree spirit, to a lifetime as a, prince? Like, what's up with the pathway? And what he sees is that the pathway is determined by a person's actions. And this is radical. No one had said this before. This is one of the Buddha's original insights. That it's ethical charge that compels the future. What you do creates your future. And so seeing this, these are the two things he sees. He sees his own past lives, and he sees that what people do creates where they are born next, creates their future state. Having seen these two things, he's seen enough. And in his third insight, the third of three, these are called the Tevidya, the three knowledges. In the third insight, he uproots the remaining, the vestiges of grasping and fearing that live in the heart. And he's fully awakened. And so he says after this that he has found the deathless. In fact, when he says he's going to go and preach, he says, "I go to Benares to ring the bell of the deathless, or to beat the drum of the deathless." Right. So a moment on this word, the deathless. It's the translation of the Pali word amata. So mata or mat is death. So amata, not dying or deathless. It's the Pali word of a parallel Sanskrit word, which is amrit or amrita, which in the Hindu world, in the Hindu yogas, is usually translated as immortal, actually. So, when the gods and the demons in the Hindu mythology churn the ocean of milk using the world serpent as a churning rope, and all of these things come up out of the ocean, including the goddess Lakshmi, who Vishnu promptly marries, because who wouldn't? At the end there comes the vessel holding the nectar of immortality, the amrita, and then the gods and the demons fight over it, and eventually the gods trick the demons. They're a little bit like, "Look over there," and they grab it. And so it's the same word. So first of all, there's a kind of semantic slippage, would be the academic way to say it, where this one word, amata and amrita, in the Buddhist context is often translated as the deathless, which sounds like one thing to our English ears, and in the Hindu and Vedanta context is translated as the immortal, which sounds like a very different thing in our ears. So, first of all, the word is mysterious. What actually was the Buddha seeking? How do we think about that? But what he teaches then is this practice that we've been doing, clarifying the mind, dealing with the heart, seeing clearly into things as they arise and pass. And he formulates the teaching in all of these lists, these sets of teachings. And several of them point directly toward this. And particularly, the teaching on the characteristics that we've pointed at, but not touched directly, the characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and selflessness. In the morning and evening chant, there's the passage, it takes the 5 aggregates. This is for the list geeks among you. If you're not into the lists, you can ignore this part. There's the 5 aspects of experience called the khandha, and they are form, feeling, perceptions, formations, and consciousness. Formations is like mental formations, choices, concepts, narratives. So there's these 5 aggregates, is the traditional translation I like, aspects of experience. And the Buddha goes through the list of the characteristics with them. He says form is dukkha. So leaving it untranslated rather than translating it directly as suffering, because it's more complex than that. Suffering, unsatisfactory, can't be relied on for permanent satisfaction, right? Subject to loss. So form is dukkha, feeling, perceptions, formations, and sense consciousness are dukkha. And then all 5 of those are impermanent. Form is impermanent, feeling is impermanent. And think about being a monastic or practicing with this chant, which I invite you to do, by the way. Do it every morning for a year, see what happens. Because it's not just a devotional chant. There's all this beautiful devotional stuff. I love the triple jam. How wonderful is the triple jam? And then you're sitting there chanting, you're just like, form is impermanent, feeling is impermanent, perceptions are impermanent, mental formations are, and you just tell yourself over and over. In addition, he further instructed, form is not self, feeling is not self, perceptions are not self. So this is the drumbeat of the teaching, actually. That all of these things that are the components of our lived experience are subject to loss, right? Are fragile. There's a tenderness in existence because we're immersed in that which fades. He found the answer to his search by finding exactly the thing his dad was trying to protect him from. He found the truth that flowers fade and that bodies become less beautiful and they crumble and die. And he understood this in a way that gave him a center of gravity in the world that was then unshakable. And that's the deathless. It's not that his body's not going to die, of course. He's a human being. When he's near his deathbed, his student Ananda, who is his cousin Ananda, is crying, and he says, Blessed One, don't die, don't leave us. And he says, Ananda has been his attendant, by the way, for like 35 years, walking around with him. And Ananda has memorized every discourse the Buddha's ever given. That was his job. So and when he took the job, he said, I'll take the job only on the promise that if you give a talk somewhere where I'm not there, that you'll repeat it to me. And that right now, before we go any further, you repeat to me all the talks you've ever given. He was a completist. Right? So Ananda remembers the entire Dhamma. Ananda also is only a stream enterer. He realizes early on the beginning of liberation and no further. So unlike all the other senior monks who are all fully enlightened arahants, Ananda is not. He's the Frodo of the story. He's weeping, he's having feelings all over the place. He's the one that we identify with. And he has to be there. So the Buddha's about to die, and Ananda is crying and saying, don't leave us, Blessed One. And the Buddha says, Ananda, what have I been telling you all these years? Have you been listening? You've memorized it all, but it hasn't penetrated. This is a body. Bodies are subject to loss. Why would you think this would be otherwise? And so the deathless that the Buddha finds is not the immortality of the body. It's also not in a facile or overly simplistic way, the immortality of the soul in some ways. Someone asked the Buddha at one point, when enlightened beings like yourself die, do they exist after death? Asks do you get reborn? And the Buddha says, no. Is it do you exist after death in some other form? And the Buddha says, no. He says, well, do you not exist at all? Do you just? And the Buddha says, no. And they go through what's called the tetralemma, the four quadrant negation. It says, well, do you both exist and not exist? And the Buddha's like, no. Do you neither exist nor not exist? No. And the questioner is like, well, what then? And the Buddha essentially says, it's the wrong question. It's the wrong question. Blessed ones are fully awakened. Arhants are perfected and fully awakened because they have uprooted suffering completely. Now, if we put it together, if you remember that it's your actions that cause your rebirth, you get reborn somewhere because something that you were doing or something that you were wanting, something that you were not finished yet, impels the rebirth. I've actually caught myself literally having the thought, I've thought to myself, well, I failed at being a monk in this life, but maybe I can do it next time. I've had that thought. Not a terrible thought. But I've also at other times had the thought wow, I really wish I had gotten laid more in my 20s. And I didn't. I wasn't very good at hooking up or whatever. And so I've had moments where darn it, I didn't have as much fun in that particular way as I wished. And I've thought, well, maybe next time, maybe I can be reborn a sort of attractive, sexually prolific person in my next life. And then I get to laugh at myself a bit for that. But it's exactly how the system works. The idea is if there's something you hunger for and you're not done with it, then you're not done. You're going to keep searching for that thing. And the things we search for, sensual pleasures, wealth, satisfaction, we keep searching for them, lifetime after lifetime. And we do things that cause us to keep going around this cycle. You keep wanting it again. So you get born. And I don't know what the "you get born" means here, but I think we can see on a planet where there's 8 billion humans who can't seem to stop consuming everything around them, that something is driving perpetual return and a lot of sex and babies. And so something is happening where the wombs of human animals keep pushing out more and more human animals who suffer from greed and hatred and delusion like all the rest. And look at the planet. There is something about action and craving that creates the next generation to suffer in the way that they do, and creates another generation of suffering beings. So I don't have a clean philosophical answer for how to stitch together, rebirth and the deathless and what Buddhas are after death. But that's some of the stories that surround the concept. And then to end, we should come right back to our practice, which is that over and over, in the process of clarifying the mind and the heart, and of trying to see clearly the different situations we find ourselves in, what we find is the tools, and if we can reach it, the ability to let go. The path is really defined by letting go. Can I let go of an obsessive thought just in a moment? Right? I talked yesterday a little bit about wisdom as maturing. How do you let go of the past just in this life? Whatever, for cosmic eons expanding and contracting. Have I let go yet of the the angsty mod teenager who just wanted to be liked, and then the bitter art school 20-something person who wanted to get it on with a lot of people and didn't manage, and also wanted to be a great musician and didn't know how to get there. Did I let go of him yet? And the spiritual striver, and the person who once won an award for his music. Have I let go of that one? And let go doesn't mean push away or object to in any way. Maybe we say, have I integrated that life into this one? Have I digested or metabolized? Have I come to maturity with that? As it turns out, I am no longer ambitious to win awards for my music. It happened once, which was really fun. And I don't hate it. I love music. The other day, coming back from a family trip to Arizona, there was a string quartet playing Mozart in the baggage claim area of the Oakland airport. They were like junior high age. And they were so beautiful. I heard them so nicely attacking the first note of the phrase and just playing the phrase and trying to play in tune and doing pretty well and just being all together. And I just started crying because it's beautiful to see people doing that. And I did that once. I was a violinist in a quartet. And then I walked away because my kid was running across the building with a basketball. And no part of me wanted to be doing what they were doing. And I didn't even need to listen to it any longer. I didn't need anything from it. And in some way, I have let go of that lifetime as a musician who suffered. And all sorts of other things I haven't let go of. Including possibly being reborn as a gigolo. I don't know. The things one never did and might. We'll get there someday, maybe. I don't know where. But I think we all know that the ease in the heart, that this is the peace at the heart of this whole lineage, I think, which is the feeling when something that once gripped around the heart has released. And however you get there, that's what we're working on. That's the fruit of this practice. And I think what the Buddha is trying to say to the person who's like, are you there, are you not? And the Buddha's like, it's not the right question. Is that this thing can be done. The Buddha said, if it was not possible to free the heart from greed, hatred, and delusion, I would not suggest that you do so. But because it is possible, I teach you to do so. Mm-hmm. And so this thing can be done in a human lifetime, not in the distant, infinite future. It can be done here and now. By people who've been traumatized, by people who've suffered terribly. Some of the people who met the Buddha were people with horrendous backstories, fiercely traumatized, wounded folks, a serial killer, an insane woman who had lost all of her family in calamity and violence and had gone mad with grief, and they were able to wake up out of the trance of grieving and causing harm, and become clear by letting go of that past in a profound way. And it doesn't go away, You let it go, and then you're just an alive human being with a clear heart. So I think this is the deathless. That you can find a little bit, or a lot, or a lot, through practice. It's a kind of being alive without fear of what's to come and without regret for what's lost. And if you let go of the past that fully, and you're not afraid of death, which really means you've let go of the future pretty fully, apparently it's really nice to live that way. And maybe in that space, the deathless just means the not haunted, the not afraid, right? The one who's well in the world. So the end of the Metta Sutta says, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Though this world theirs is suffering, it doesn't mean we leave anyone behind. We're still right here, right? Here's the poem the Buddha says upon his awakening. Through the round of countless births I wandered without rest, without reward, seeking the builder of this house. Painful is birth, again and again. House builder, you are seen. You will not build a house again. All your rafters broken, the ridgepole destroyed. Gone to the unformed. The mind has attained the end of craving. All right. Thank you for your warm attention and your practice. We have about 20 minutes before 9 and a closing sitting, so some walking, some tea. We'll come back for meditation and a short closing chant. Coming to the close of our day together. And once more gather in the threads of the mind. To the bright stillness in the here and now. Present with this body as it is, present with each other, present with the heart, and just feeling whatever's here. Remembering your day of practice. Remember a moment of ease of interest, of peace, in whatever way. Showed itself to you. Remember a challenge from the day. Or some piece of content or story that was moving through you this day. And then just setting it all down. Setting down the past. Set down any thought or wondering or worry about tomorrow. And you can even set down any trying to be anywhere special that might be present in your heart. You can set down the idea that you're meditating and let it go. You could let your eyes open and just sit like an ordinary animal on the beautiful earth. Gratitude for our day of practice together. Thank yourself for the effort you put in, the sincere coming back again and again, the sincerity of your search for the deathless, for peace. And close our day again with the sharing of blessings. We take this heart of gratitude and warmth and appreciation. And we once again remember all the beings around, all those who have gifted this space to us. Our families, our communities, spirit beings. So at the end of the chant sheet is the short prayer, the sharing of blessings. We'll chant in English. Sealing our practice together. Now let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile,
May all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. Rest well, or practice on into the night. Blessings, and we'll come together again in the morning.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.